welcome to Laguna Woods Stories, a show where we talk to interesting people and find out their stories. Today we have something a little different. We have two interesting people, which is a little different, but we're going to talk with them especially about a program that they are involved with called Grief Share. Grief Share. On my right here is Jeannie Williams, and she is the one who brought Grief Share to her church, and so she'll know how it got started and all that. And across from me is Jim Calderona. I say that right?
Correct.
Okay, good. And they are both with Grace Hills Church, which is basically across the street from Laguna Woods Village. Mm-hmm. And Jim lives in the village, right?
Definitely so. 18 years.
18 years, okay. So tell us just in brief terms, Jeannie, we'll start with you. What is Grief Share and what about it was attractive? It's a program that's national, at least in scope.
Yes.
Many churches offer it. So what is it, and why did you adopt it for your church?
Well, Grief Share is actually a 13-week program, and it's designed to help people through grief because grief has so many effects on people.
Right.
And I first heard about it from another friend who was doing it at their church, and I had been through. My father had passed away in 2009, and my mother passed away in 2014. And so I had watched my mother go through 5 years of grieving.
Oh, yeah.
And saw just the physical and the emotional and the mental effects that it had on her. And so I realized that, and my sister and I were her primary caregivers at the time. So I just realized that there were a lot of people who didn't have family to help them through, or just that younger people are pretty busy these days a lot of the time, or their families are far away. And I think you find that when you're grieving for the first 3 weeks after the death of your loved one, you get a lot of support.
Yes.
And over time, people go back to their busy lives.
That's right.
So I think Grief Share is a way to still be able to talk about your loss and to be able to hear about other people who are going through it too. Because I think the primary question that we're asked is my grieving normal?
Yeah.
Because it has so many physical effects.
Well, I remember after my wife died, that was 11 years ago, I think for the first 3 weeks or so, my refrigerator had more food in it than I could possibly eat.
Yes.
But then after about 3 weeks, like you say, life goes on, and you're still grieving, and you don't get the support that that you need often, especially if you're a single person and don't have family around. So, Jim, how did you get involved in Grief Share?
Well, one Sunday, Jeannie got out front of our church and said, I'm going to be starting a program called Grief Share. And if any of you'd like to find out about it, please come to the meeting. Well, I'd never heard of it. I'm involved with men's ministry and Bible study, but it sounded interesting. So when I went to the meeting, and everything was shared about it, it's for those who have lost loved ones. Well, I lost mom and dad about 7 years ago, and then mom 6 years ago. But I was never dealt with something that I'd lost early in our marriage. After about 5 years of marriage, we were trying to have children.
Sure.
And we lost one very young. And I never dealt with that.
Wow.
And that's how I really wanted to find out what it was that was deep inside as to what I was still grieving about.
And just ignoring a loss doesn't work, right?
No, it didn't. It didn't, because there was always like a little hook or a needle there.
Yeah.
And anytime I was around children, especially little babies, I didn't know what it was. What was hooking me? What was kicking me all the time?
Oh, yeah.
Until I got into this program. And going through the program as a facilitator, and not a psychologist, not a psychiatrist, but just helping others walk through this program helped me immensely.
Now, grief share, I heard about it after my son died, actually, before my wife died. And a friend of mine in Florida told me about it because her son was involved in Georgia in a grief share. He was facilitating a grief share situation there, and I had never heard of it, of course. It's a national program. It's all over the country. Many churches offer it. But so I got online and looked it up and found that Saddleback Church here in our area offers it, and so I went to it and found it very helpful, very helpful. It doesn't magically somehow make the grief go away, but it helps you know it's normal, and it gives you some tips for dealing with it, I guess.
It can also give you friendships with other people who are going through it, and I think that happens fairly frequently.
Yeah. In fact, I have a friend who was widowed. A man was widowed and went to a grief share and ended up meeting a woman that he married. So that's what happened.
There's no dating allowed during grief share, but afterwards, that's all.
Yeah. So, what was involved in bringing grief share to your church?
Well, let's see. I first found out who it's called. Church Initiative is the group that runs it. And let's see. I think I'm trying to remember where they are here. It would tell me in here if I look. But they're in the Midwest. Let's see. I'm not finding it, but here we go. Wake Forest. Oh, it's not. It's in the east. Wake Forest, North Carolina.
Okay.
And anyway, I went to. They just told me to go to a website called griefshare.org. So if anybody is looking for a group that's near them and they're not in this area, or they want, our group actually meets at 10 in the morning on Thursdays, every Thursday morning, and we're in our second week now. So we go from 10 to 11:30. So, but if anybody does want to find a group at another time, I know Lutheran Church of the Cross has a group on Tuesday that's from 12:30 to 2.
Right.
And I know there are other churches in the area that meet in the evening as well for people who work. So that was what I did. Was I just went to griefshare.org, and they sign you onto something. If you're a leader, I had two other women who were helping me at the time, as well as Jim, and so we just signed on to something called Leader Zone there, and they basically tell you pretty much everything you need to do to start a group.
Yeah. So if you go to grief share in one church, it would be pretty similar to grief share at another church, right? The grief share curriculum is standard, I take it.
Right, the curriculum is standard. You have a video. How long are the videos?
Our video seminars generally last between 25 to 35 minutes. And generally after the video, we'll have a little break, coffee, drinks, whatever. Then we gather back together and try to get in, depending on the size. The first year we had like 22 to 24 people. So we would break into like 4 groups. And that gives everybody an opportunity to talk and not feel like they're going to be demanded to talk. And it makes them feel more comfortable. Then after that, we have a personal workbook at the end where I will explain to them. And it happens that a lot of people have a hard time, first time, writing their notes down, taking the time. And I say, you know what? It's okay. So, but if you go home and you read, it'll be all right. And if you come back, you haven't done your homework, you're not going to be punished. I said, because that's not what it's all about. It's how is it going to help you? And we've noticed that some of the people who have come not just once, but come twice. Some of them have been 3 times through the program. Because every time you hear the video, you pick up something different that helps them and enables them to continue walking through the path that they're on.
Yeah. So the entire program is, what did you say, 13 weeks?
13 weeks,
13
yes.
Weeks. So do you need to start at the beginning of that and go?
No, you can start at any time. And if people start, a lot of times we've had people start like in the 9th or 10th week, and then they'll just, often will come to the beginning ones the next session, because we'll have another session in September.
So each lesson, if you call them lessons, kind of stands alone and makes sense by itself, even
Right.
if you
Exactly.
haven't had
Exactly.
any lessons that lead to that.
Right.
What are some of the topics in the presentation? What are
Let's see,
talking
they
about?
talk about just the effects of grief, you know, the physical effects, you know, things like just exhaustion, not being able to get up and do anything,
Yeah.
and also memory loss.
Really?
In fact, yes, oh yeah, often children of people who've had a loss think that their parents are going into dementia, but they're not. They're just suffering it's a massive shock.
Yeah.
You know, and
Wow.
it takes a
Okay.
response to it. So that's another thing, you know, that can happen. And there also people who have been through grief are also more prone to injury.
Really?
Yeah, yeah, that's what the
Sort of
studies have
lose
shown.
concentration or something?
Yes, yeah, my brother-in-law fell down his steps. He's lived in a house 10 years, but he lost my sister and fell down the stairs 2 weeks
Wow.
later.
So it affects you in many
right.
ways that you might not even think of.
Right, and it affects you emotionally because a lot of people want to withdraw. You know, just kind of, you know, just be away from it because sometimes too people will make insensitive attempts to comfort people.
Yeah.
You know, say things that are just not very tactful or.
Let's explore that just.
Oh, I heard a horrible one on our
Yeah.
video last time. It was a woman who had came up to a lady who had just lost a baby, and she said, "Well, at least you won't have to potty train now."
Oh.
Can you imagine?
Yeah. Oh my.
So, yes, there are some pretty horrible ones, and you just try and help people to realize that they don't know what to say, and if they haven't had a loss, they don't understand.
Right.
You know, and so we try and teach forgiveness of that too.
Oh yeah.
Because you do have to do some forgiving, you know, and often people will try and kind of tell you to do things like, "Oh, let's clean out the closet right away,"
Yeah.
you know, and you're not ready to do that. And you know, it can take some people years to want to do that.
Yeah.
And Grief Share, they just kind of encourage, if you do want to do that, you open the door an inch the first week, 2 inches the second week. You know, just keep going.
Give yourself time.
Yes, give yourself time, absolutely.
The biggest thing, Tom, is to make them feel welcome and loved.
Yeah.
And my first question to each person who joins, and there's more women than there are men, but we do have guys come in. And my question to them, first thing is, are you a handshaker or are you a hugger? And they look a little puzzled. I said, it's okay. I said, I'm a hugger. I said, I'm here to give you God's love, and I will love you through the hug. And the guys are fine, that's no problem. And the ladies, I can understand, they're a little taken aback. I said, but I will break you down, and I said, to the point where you'll feel loved and cared for because you're family now. You come into a family here that will love you and protect you. Because what you say here stays here. We're not out to gossip or anything else.
Yes, it's
and that gives
confidential.
them the confidence to let them know that it's okay to open up and share what's really going on in their lives. And that's what you want to do, is make them feel welcome.
Yeah. How long, Jim, does a pain of grief last if you don't go to something like Grief Share?
Like I said, I carried one for like 40 years.
40 years.
Yeah, I've been married 53, and it was at the first 4 years of our life when I lost our child.
Yeah.
And it wasn't bad. I tried to ignore it all the time, but I never knew what I was doing until I got into the program, and I was able to deal with that, and I've been able to let it go now. I love kids, and I love being around kids all the time. As a school teacher, that's what I said I love to do. And it's just sharing God's love is really what I try to do when we're in the program, and let them know it's all about timing. You may take longer than others, but don't worry about it. Everybody's, suffers at their own pace and will heal at their own pace. And that's one thing I try to make sure they know. Everyone just has their own timeline. Don't worry about it.
Yeah. So going through Grief Share doesn't mean that all the pain is gone forever.
No.
But it helps you, it gives you coping skills to cope with it. Because people often will be involved in, they'll take on defense mechanisms. Things like being very busy. my brother-in-law was doing internet shopping like crazy. You know, there are all sorts, or just stiff upper lip. You know, I'm getting through this, and don't mention it to me. I don't want. I'm dealing with it. You know, and that's not necessarily true for people.
Right.
So, and we try and teach more healthy coping methods. Things like, you know, even just listening to music, taking time to meditate, to read your Bible, or just spending time with family or friends. Yeah, and at first you may not feel up to doing those things. You may not feel you're even up to keep holding up an end of a conversation. You know, but I think eventually letting people in and letting people who are safe in. You know, some people are intrusive in grief.
Oh yeah.
So you really want to let in people who are safe.
Yeah, some people are well intentioned and want to tell you what you need to do to get over your grief.
Yes.
It doesn't usually work, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. So, you mentioned one.
But I think we talk about different ways of healing, things that you go through. First, you have to kind of accept your loss, that you've had this loss, and sometimes that is hard at the beginning. You know, people often will still see, you know, the person that they've lost, or hear their voice, or
Really?
and often
that's not that uncommon. Huh?
yeah, no, that's not uncommon. And also, you know, I know a lot of people like to keep the voice of their spouse on their phone.
Oh yeah.
For example, or and I think that's fine. Yeah. That's the same reason you keep the clothes around, you know, and mementos.
And the pictures.
And the pictures, of
oh,
course, yeah.
In fact, in the 12th or 13th week, we generally will have the program will ask them, if you can you bring a picture of one you lost? And we'll bring it that way it makes it even more feasible for them to do this, because it gives them, they can see it. And others have family members or people they lost also. Lets them know, you know what, you're in a family, and you know what, because we are Christian based, it doesn't make any difference where you come from. They all come together, and it's just a blessing that they can show, and we shower them with just more love.
You say you're Christian based.
Yes, sir.
And we mentioned that you're in a lot of different Christian churches. Who is welcome to come to these sessions? Do you need to be a Christian, or do you? Yeah.
No.
Everyone's welcome. We've had some who are non-Christians come in, and we've shared with them that this is all Bible-based. And I think some of them have been able to go through the whole program. Others, maybe I think, hesitated and they didn't know what they were getting into. And so I think maybe I only lost 2 that I believe that didn't come back anymore. But for the most part, everyone who's come through has just been blessed by the program itself.
So the program is not aimed toward converting people?
No, not at all.
Whatsoever. No,
not at all. And a lot of the words of comfort are from the Psalms, so that Jewish people would be perfectly comfortable with them too. King David knew a lot about grief.
Yeah, this is true. Yeah. And he wrote a lot about grief. Not all of which is comforting.
No, not all.
Exactly.
Yeah. Tell us a little bit about your church, Grace Hills Church. I've driven by it hundreds of times, no doubt. I've never been there. What would I expect to find there?
Well, actually, Grace Hills was started in the 1960s. We were in a group of 3 churches and a temple. And what happened was Ross Cortese, when first what was then Leisure World was built, donated the land to any religious group that could produce 100 congregants. So our church was one of those, and so we've been there since the 1960s.
So Cortese donated the land?
Yes, he donated the land for it.
The church had to build a building? Is that
right,
the way it
exactly.
works?
Yeah.
And so several of the churches kind of around the periphery of
right, the Methodist Church and the Pacific Hills, Calvary Pacific Hills, and the temple also were also from that same time. And our church, actually, our religious base is Baptist. Let's see, where our pastor right now has been with us 17 years. Let's see, we did have a pastor in between who was here 3 years, but then he resigned, and so now we have our old pastor is back. But his name is Mike Johnson, and he's a very friendly, caring person.
Oh, yeah. And he's not ashamed to, because we'll tease him about it. When he's at the pulpit preaching, all of a sudden he'll say something, he'll just break into tears.
Oh, okay.
That shows his really
a very sensitive,
totally sensitive side.
Is the church made up primarily of people from Laguna Woods being where it
Yeah,
is?
yes
the
and
majority.
no. Yes and no, but it's in around the community, and we have grown. I know I wasn't going there 8, 9 years ago. We were attending another church, but I heard a voice tell me that I needed to move because I needed to serve somewhere else.
Oh.
And I'm going, well, what do I want to serve somewhere else? I mean, I like where I was at.
Yeah.
But I did, and I think where I was called was I needed to serve here in Laguna Woods. And that's why we had a Bible study in my home with people who lived in Laguna Woods.
So
I was fulfilling
closer
what
to
I was
home.
supposed to do. Exactly, very close to home. And like I said, we've been here 8 years, and like I said, I help the men's ministry also. I help cook for them.
Well, you're the leader of it, too.
And one of the leaders, too. And then I also had a Bible study, and then, like I said, I do grief share now also. So God is just completely opening doors for us and just letting those who really need to be comforted and who need to be fed to come on in.
I saw that you had an ad in our local paper.
In the Globe.
That's how I found out about your particular meeting and decided to ask you to be guests on the show. So, what else do you do to make it known?
Well, let's see. We're just putting a sign out here.
We had like I said, we had the sign out there, and it's only up for 2 to 3 weeks prior to. Well, because of what took place in January, where our other pastor left, and so we just changed to one service, and so they wanted to make sure that was up. Like I say, when you called and talked to Jeannie, that was a blessing. Because this is another way for us to get out there, for the message to get out there.
Suppose a person went through a loss like you did several years ago, a number of years ago, and they're coping with it okay. I mean, they're not, grieving obviously every day. But would there be any benefit to going through grief share at this point?
Oh, definitely so. Because first off, to be around people who have lost loved ones also. And that would put them at ease. And then going through the program week by week, they learn how to cope with what it is they've really truly lost. Some may still be angry, in which they say it's funny, but they do. People are angry that they lost a loved one. They're all by themselves. They had to change everything. Right. One of the women said it was so funny. I thought she was angry. It was because she had to learn how to put gas in her gas tank. She said, I've never done that before. And I said, well, yeah. She said, my husband did everything for me. When I needed to get a mechanic, he'd call up the mechanic. What do I do? How do I put air in the tires? And it's just little things, or even taking the trash out. Yeah. So that became one of the hardest things. I have to take the trash out all by myself. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, those are called secondary losses.
Yes, exactly.
And there are a lot of them.
There are a lot of them, yeah. If you're have been married and you move into Laguna Woods as a married couple, your income is based on the couple.
Right.
Oh yeah.
Right.
Then find yourself with one income versus two.
Right.
And that changes a lot of things. So those are the secondary losses.
Right, and they're also just not being part of a couple.
Yeah.
You might find your couple friends don't do so much with you.
Yeah, this is certainly true. Most of your friends were couples before, and now you get introduced to the whole new world of singleness.
Right, right, exactly.
So, is grief share help in making those kinds of adjustments?
Yes, yeah. We basically, people get to know each other in grief share, and we've had several people get to be very close friends in it, and I think a lot of the time, we have, for example, we have a group of women after church who will go out, who are widows, who go out together and have lunch and and get together and just kind of Well, there's one other thing too. A lot of the time, you don't realize that when you've lost someone, you do at least have later on. You kind of have the opportunity to find yourself, because if you're part of a couple, you've sort of subordinated. You're just what you do to each other. A lot. And I think that's what some people have said. Well, I started painting, or I started and I love it, and I'd given it up. And you have the time to take it. And if you're in Laguna Woods, you have 300 clubs.
Right. No reason why you need to do anything alone in Laguna Woods.
That is absolutely true. In fact, I use one of my tools that I do. I love to cook. Like I said, I cook at the men's breakfast, but I love to cook at home too. And I use that tool that God has given me when I'm in the gym, whether I'm working out or working. Many of the women who are coming in either heard me talking about how I like to cook, and they'll ask me, well, what is it you make? I said, I like to make soups. I always thought it was funny my grandparents had soup all the time, but it was homemade. And so what I do is I'll ask them, I said, would you eat soup? They, oh yeah. So I'll bring them in a container of soup to kind of win them over from one way, but also help share with them, what's going on. And I'll find their story out as whether they're widowed or whether they got divorced. And even in divorce, sometimes it's not really a way that they could come into Grief Share, but let them know it's okay, we love you, and I'll support you in any way I can. So I have a lot of women out there who like my soups now, and my wife says, are you sure you're just giving all that soup up for free? I go, it's all right, don't worry about it.
And speaking of free, that's what you charge, I presume.
Well, I think we do have, there is a book for it, which I'll show here.
Sure.
And that
is $20.
is $20.
And then we add on $5 more just because we bring in coffee and donuts or cookies, and that's
snacks
it.
and fresh fruit.
So
And just fresh fruits, stuff
So
like that.
$25 gets you the book and
that gets you through the whole thing, yes.
Through the whole thing. Well,
And then once they've gone through the program, they don't have to buy the book again.
Yeah, no, they can just come back.
They just come back, and it's, well, would you like to make a $5 donation so that we can make sure we cover all the food that's coming in for everyone else who's here, and that's no problem at all for $5.
We'll put your information on the screen. We have run out of time for.
Well, thank you so much.
Right now, so thank you for sharing an interesting program, a helpful program, one that I have been through and benefited from, and I hope many others will too.